is the final week, and so I've loved this series because when you are and I'm not talking about a whole person, like there's nothing wrong with you at all. Like let's get rid of the idea that we're going to be perfect individuals on this. You're going to wake up with a bad attitude oftentimes, and you're like, this is not very Christian, this attitude. You're going to do things that you're like, I'm just kind of going through the motions. You're not jumping for joy always, okay? I know you're supposed to rejoice in the Lord always. We will rejoice in the Lord always, but sometimes we are weary of the things around us, and we wish things would change, and some things just don't change right away. But I believe that God's doing a great work in each one of us. I see it in us. I believe that God is in the process of healing each one of us, because how many of us, we were born perfect and we don't have anything that God needs to heal? The longer I've been a Christian since October 11th, 1996, and I've been a Christian a long time. So the longer I am a Christian, the more I realize I need more of God. I thought when I first became a Christian, it was an altar. It was like, not in this building, but it was on this side of the church building. And I had this false assumption that everything was going to, like basically, God was going to give me a magical pill that I would just take that and everything would just melt away. I would, when I get married, I didn't really think about marriage. I was, when I was a teenager, girls do, but guys usually were like, whatever. I was thinking about basketball and stuff like that. But I was like, I'll never have any problems. My kid, when he's born, he's going to sleep 100% well. He's never going to be colic. He's never going to have some, what was that, gripe water, whatever they had. It was that magic water that made his stomach feel good. And then I take a little swig of it and made me feel good. But this is such important talk because I want to talk about something that a lot of us might laugh, but it's very serious. Because once I say it, you're going to go, okay. So how in the world do we grow into an emotionally mature adult? Now, don't point fingers or don't say a name of someone in town or your brother or whatever, or your grandfather used to be this way. We all know people, you don't point at your husband or your wife, okay? We all know people who are chronologically older, but emotionally, they're a teenager, if at all, or an infant. Maybe they're a teenager if they're kind of good, right? And wow, like sometimes my wife will say, wow, that's very, okay, what are you, 8 years old? I go, okay, yesterday I was 6 years old, so I am maturing. I'm going the right way, right? And so when we were first married, I was like an emotional 2-year-old, right? So now I'm getting down the road, but we want to end this series of how in the world do you become an emotionally mature adult? Adults have responsibilities that kids don't have, and you know a little bit more, and so it's expected that you do the right thing. Sometimes adults, we don't do the right thing anyway, but we know better, usually. We don't do the things that we do wrong and go, I didn't know that was supposed to be the wrong thing. I didn't know that I was supposed to yell at my wife and tell her blah, 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 blah. Man, I thought she'd be happy about that. No, that's childish. That's like, I know that if I say the wrong thing to her, she's going to be mad at me or she's going to start crying, which isn't fair in the middle of an argument if you start crying. Then I automatically lose. I can't win that argument. But I want you to say the word adult. Here, I want to say something that I want you to say grow up. I want you to look at someone around the room and just say grow up. Give you permission to do that. Grow up. No, grow up. Grow up. Grow up. Everybody grow up, right? We need in a spiritual and emotional way and in a mental way, we need to take the next step, okay? Some of us are emotional infants, and even if you were all of a sudden you decided to do one good thing and you became an emotional child, which is a little bit better than an infant. When Hayden was an infant, he couldn't take care of himself literally. And then one day he decided, I can actually put my shoe on. He couldn't tie it, but he could put it on. That was a step in the right direction. Okay? Now, he doesn't really quite have his driver's permit. We had to give it to they had to send it to the driver's ed guy, but he kind of informally has his permit right now, which pray for me. And pray for him, but pray for me. But someday he's going to be driving a car, and that's another step in the right direction. That doesn't mean he's going to be a good driver. It's just the next step in maturity. And so what happens is most people are, not most people, I'll be fair, I'll be nice. Many people are chronologically older, but emotionally they're young. Okay? They've had 45 years of the same year, basically. So you could be a Christian for 30 years and still be on your first year as a Christian. You have the same year over and over and over. Doesn't mean you're a 30-year-old Christian. It means that you're still a baby, but you've done it 30 times. Now that's ridiculous. If Hayden, he'll be what, 16 this year, right? Okay, thank you. There's too many numbers in my life. But he'll be 16 this year. Can you imagine if he still had his binky, the little pacifier, they call binky now, but, if he stuck his thumb, you're right? If he did that, we would know something was emotionally wrong with him, and but we expect him a little bit more of him now than, is this sermon just for Hayden? Yes, probably. Okay, so we expect a little bit more out of him now than we used to. And so when we become an emotionally adult, we are expected to do more. Now, a lot of people, they're actually immature emotionally. They are easily offended. Don't point fingers or say, oh man, that's me. Don't do that. Okay? They get their feelings hurt easily. They get offended. They demand their own way all the time. My way or the highway. This happens in marriage all the time. The man or the wife. I'm not going to pick on the husbands or wives. Just, there are people in marriages, they're like, I want my way and it's always my way no matter what. Or you're like us, we're like, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. What do you want? We just don't. No one demands their way. Everybody's like, I don't know. What do you want to do? I don't know. What do you want to watch? I don't know. It's like, that's another problem, but we're indecisive. When they have conflict in their life, they deal with it poorly or they avoid conflict altogether. The wife, we said this in one of the series, one of the episodes, you want to call it that, is, honey, we need to talk. And I hate that. Because I go to the worst. Okay? What would I do this time? But honey, we need to talk. And I say, no, I'm okay. We're good. We don't need to talk. If you're an emotional baby or infant or adolescent, you don't want to talk. You just bury your head in the sand and believe everything's okay. I'm a peacekeeper. Husbands are really good at this. We're peacekeepers, so we're just quiet. And that's not really peacekeeping. That's avoidance. And that's never good. Jesus never said avoid your personal issues between you and someone else. Or maybe they play the blame game. It's not my fault. It's, it was, God, it was that woman that you gave me. She made me get that fruit, whatever, I call it apple. She made me take a bite of that. No, even Adam played the blame game because he was emotionally, even way back then, he was an emotional baby. And sometimes I've seen this in my own life. Sometimes that if they're immature, they leak their emotions to a third party. Someone hurts you, and then you go, "Did you hear what so and so did to me? Like we need to not like them." And so what that is that's being a baby, or maybe being a teenager. Teenagers do this all the time, right? They're teenagers, let alone adults, but teenagers are really good at gossiping. Like, did you hear what such and such? We need to go make fun of them. Did you see what so-and-so was wearing? We got to go make fun of them. Did you see them when they played basketball and they missed that land? Oh no, that was just me that they made fun of when I missed the land. But when you're a teenager, you got to be perfect or someone will make fun of you, right? And that's immature. That's a lot of people though. And so many people believe that when you become a Christian, everything in your life is just going to go great. Okay? You're a new creation in Jesus Christ. How many of us love that verse? I love that verse. We are brand new in Jesus Christ. The old is gone, the new has come. Does that mean that you're immediately emotionally healed of everything? No. That is why you'll meet Christians. That's why you'll meet ministers and pastors and leaders and political leaders who are quote Christian, and they will have a moment that they break down emotionally, and you go, man, I thought they were strong. The reality is that just because we are brand new creations in Jesus Christ, and that's good, I thank God for that. That means the past is gone. No matter what you did yesterday, if it's in Christ, you're not held accountable for it. Man, that's good news. I mean, if I was held accountable to everything that I've ever done wrong, and I go in front of God, I'd be in trouble. But when I stand before God at Judgment Day, I'm not going to be held accountable for those things because it's in Jesus Christ. But I am responsible at this point in my life to say, Lord, I've got some things that I'm holding on to that need you. I need you, God. And part of that, Lord, is those thoughts that go in my brain that are not right. The way that I treat people, the way that I treat my kid or my spouse or my coworker or my boss, or I treat my employees, or I treat that cashier that doesn't know how to count, right? I mean, or that long line at the store, and you're like, come on, stop writing a check. They invented something called the debit card. That's exactly the same thing. You just don't have to write the check. If that's you, I'm sorry, but I don't like people writing checks. But see, I need to give that to the Lord, right? I need to give that to the Lord. But if you want to be a mature believer, if you want to grow up and you want to mature, kind of cut it off there. If you want to mature as a believer and you want to become a grown-up in your faith and emotions, I should have put emotions there, it is going to take a lot of intentionality. A lot of intentionality. In other words, you can't be a mature believer if you're just doing things haphazardly or half-heartedly or accidentally. You're not going to fall into maturity. It just doesn't happen. You have to be intentional every single day that if I want to mature in my relationship with Lydia, I've got to be intentional about it. I've got to look for it. I can't just walk in the house one day and just go, I'm not going to try. I'm just mature today. No, I got to be intentional about it. So there are different stages of emotional maturity. Now, I don't want you to point fingers at someone else, but I want you to identify where you're at. Okay? Now, emotional infant. Now, I realize I made that slide. I should have put the lettering white. Emotional infant. Everybody say baby. You're a baby. Don't be a baby. Have you ever called someone a big baby? I'll give you something to cry about, little baby. Right? My best friend growing up, we were beating each other up. But it was my best friend. I'm not hanging out with you anymore. And then the next day we're like, hey, what are you doing? Right? We were really good friends, me and my friend Nathan. But I hit him, he hit me, and I hit him so hard he started crying. True story. I wasn't a Christian. Leave me alone. And we were walking with his mom and dad, and his dad, Wayne, said, Nathan, you're crying, you little baby. I'll give you something to cry about, you little baby. I'm like, ooh, man, that's a mean dad. Come on, I hit him. Right? But his dad refused to believe that his kid would cry. But that's where some of us are emotionally. We're an emotional infant. These people looked for other people to always take care of them, period. Now, let me be very clear. I didn't put this in my notes, but I want to be very clear. We all need each other. We do. Okay? But at some point, if you talk to Lydia, she'll say that she cuts my steak, if she cuts it up in little pieces. I don't ask her to do that. I do appreciate it. It's kind of nice just to be able to just start pigging out without having to go. It depends on how tough the steak is, how cheap we are. But if she has to feed me and go, okay, chew, 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 open the gate, right? And then if I have to keep doing that, at some point she has to stop feeding me. I have to feed myself. And at some point you can keep cutting the steak if you want to. I never asked you that, but it's nice. Okay? But we all know what that means with that, but we need each other. But at some point, we need to say, I can't rely on everybody all the time because some people are not going to be there for us. We need to say, God, I'm going to take the first step, and I will rely on the church. I will rely on my friends. I will rely on some of my leaders. I'm going to do that. But Lord, I'm not going to use it as an excuse not to grow up myself. Okay? But what happens when a baby doesn't get what they want? They cry. Brooke Zimmerman had a baby, and pray for her. It's not easy having it made me. I think we woke up in the middle of the night, and I'm not usually a 3:00 in the morning person conversationalist, but it made me go, thank God I don't have a newborn right this second, because Hayden was out, right? He's asleep, I'm assuming, unless he's on his phone or playing video games or whatever. But I assumed he was asleep. And so I said, thank God, hallelujah, I don't have an infant, I don't have a baby. But what happens when the baby doesn't get their way? Wah! Wah! What happens when you take away their blankie for a second? Wah! What happens if you feed them and they're full? Wah! They spit it out and they just get mad. They cry, they scream, they throw a tantrum. And these people who are emotionally infant, they have a hard time serving other people. And they have a hard time loving one another because they're so wrapped up in themselves and their own needs. Like, Lord, I've got my own needs. I can't really help anyone else. I mean, we've all been there. I've been there. Yeah, I'm helping this person out or helping that person out. But what about my needs, Lord? Now, it's been a long time. I'm trying to say, God is good. He is helping each one of us and helping me, hopefully. Ask my wife, she'll know the truth. She'll be the truth teller here. But hopefully I'm getting to the stage where I'm a little bit older than an emotional infant. I don't want to be a 40-year-old, 2-month-old. Okay? The second step is a little bit better. They ought to know better, but it's an emotional child. I like that picture. Everyone that's ever had a kid, if you didn't have a kid, don't worry. You know, it's the most difficult job outside of being married or some jobs. Okay, if I was an undersea welder or something like that, that might be harder than being a parent. But being a parent was the hardest thing I've ever done, to be honest with you. It's hard. It's hard for mothers, hard for dads, it's hard. But we've all had kids that look like that. Okay? There are some videos, I can't find them, lucky Hayden, but of him. I think Lydia went to Michelle's one day and he was on by the window. He was just a little guy. Mom! And I just grabbed my camera, my video camera at the time. Remember that? You probably don't. You've seen the video. But he's crying. But that's because he was a kid. He was an infant. He was a child. What do you expect? He needed his mommy. He doesn't do that now, I don't think. But these emotional child, they're content and happy as long as they get what they want. These kids get their feelings hurt easily. They complain and gripe. They sulk. If you're married, you could probably point at your spouse and go, I remember when you sulked like that and pouted. Right? We all do that. We need to grow up. The third one is a little bit better, but this is the most dangerous one in my opinion, is the emotional adolescent. And I found that picture of a kid on his phone that was just perfect. Okay? Look, I'm on my phone as much as they are, so I can't really blame them. But what's dangerous about this one is that teenagers should know a little bit better, but they don't always do that. They don't always do what they're supposed to do. Right? We all were teenagers once. Weren't you? Anybody here was a teenager before? Did you do everything that your parents told you when you were a teenager? No, you did the opposite. And then you realized, and maybe not yet for some of us, but you realize that your parents were right. Not all the time. But for some things you're like, yeah, they're a little bit better than I was at that. They were a little bit more down the road. But emotional adolescents, they know what they're supposed to do, but they don't do it anyway. They don't do the right thing. They don't like being controlled. Mom, Dad, you can't tell me what to do. God, you can't tell me what to do. Honey, you can't tell me what to do. They keep score. You know, I helped you out, you got to help me out. You know, it's 3 against 1 here. I've helped you 3 times and you only helped me once. It's your turn now. I'm not helping you anymore. They keep score. They blame others. They gossip with others. You could be an older adult. You could be a 90-year-old teenager. It depends on how your emotional and your mental and your spiritual state really is. You can be that kind of thing. Now, this is where our goal is emotional adult. They look so happy. I like that picture. That's why I chose it, because they look so happy. They just look like they're in love. Or, you know, maybe one of them's got gas or something like that. I don't know. That's what I like to think. But this is where God wants us all to be. This is where we maturely take responsibility for our own actions. I'm not going to blame, let me be honest. When we're in an argument, me and my wife, there are times that I'm wrong, and there are times that she's wrong. Right, Lynn? Okay, there are times that she's wrong. Okay? When Hayden's arguing with me, there are times that I go overboard. And I shouldn't. And there are times I go overboard, and I should, because he's not doing what he's supposed to do. I'm using you as a human guinea pig here, an example. Okay, you're okay. But this is our goal. We take responsibility. I don't blame Hayden. I don't blame Lydia. I don't blame you guys. I don't blame my job. I don't blame the fact that my car won't start or whatever. I don't blame the fact that, I'm not getting my certain way. I take the responsibility where I've been wrong, and I take that, and I go, you know what? I'm in an argument with Lydia, and I take responsibility for my part of the argument. I take responsibility for how I reacted. You must think that we argue a lot. This is just an example. I'm just thinking. We haven't argued. We've been doing pretty good. I mean, there's been a few little spats, but, it's just little disagreements, that's all right. That's all. But this is where we actually can disagree. When we're an adult, you can disagree with other people without being disagreeable. And imagine that. Imagine disagreeing with people in the church and not being disagreeable. Now, I've been part of churches in my past that there was a disagreement, and it was like you would think that the person that they disagreed with was a devil. Because they hated them, and they avoided them, and they gossiped about them, and they left the church, and they're like, if I see them in town, I come from a big city, so you could leave a church and never see that person ever again. That you're not so lucky in this town. I see a lot of people that sat right there, okay? And I could actually, this is being very blunt, I could go there and be an emotional kid and go, nope. Not looking at them. Or I could be the grown up and go, hey, how you guys doing? And be real about it, not fake, right? Be real about it. That's called being an emotional adult. We don't blame others for our stuff. We can actually, when we're this kind of person, emotional adult, we can resolve conflict and we can restore relationships with people that we've had broken relationships. So, what am I saying? I really believe that the church, I'm not talking about just us, but the church needs to hear this. It's huge. Grow up. I'm saying that to me too. Oh, that was a good way to start that. Grow up, right? Grow up. That is the biggest thing that we could learn not as a church, just this congregation, but I'm talking about the global church, the American church, the church in Kamiankuski, is to look at one another in love and go, you know what? There are times that I'm going to disagree with someone. I disagree with myself often. Like, Joel, did you just say what I just think you? Did you really just think that? Why did you do that? Why? How? How did you do that? What in the world are you thinking? The problem, my self responds, you weren't thinking. That was the problem. Right? 1 Corinthians 13. By the way, if you don't read the Bible, if you've never read the Bible, I want you to, at some point today, read 1 Corinthians, New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Romans, Acts, Romans, 1 Corinthians. 1 Corinthians chapter 13 is a chapter I read during weddings. If you ever get married and I'm the person, you're going to get that. Okay? But verse 11, Paul says this, when I was a child, I spoke and I thought and I reasoned as a child. Don't we expect kids to be kids? We expect, if you're ever a parent, you do overreact, right? Anybody a parent that ever overreacted to something? You think that 2-year-old's a 20-year-old, right? It's a problem when your kid's 20 and they're acting like they're 2. That's a different problem. But I'm talking about that. When I was a child, I spoke and I thought and I reasoned as a child. But when I grew up, I put all the childish things back away. I'll put it away. I threw it behind me. That's easier said than done. Isn't it? How many of us have put childish things away? All of it. Maybe, and this is not a diss on any of us, this is a diss on me. Maybe we've been Christians for a while and we haven't thrown away childish things, childish ways, childish thinking, childish whatever you want to call it. Childish. This is, I'm going to throw away temper tantrums because I'm not a kid anymore. Like, if I don't get my way, Lord, or honey, sweetie, if I don't get my way, Hayden, I'm a parent, I'm the boss. It's right. But I could be, and we'll learn this in just a moment, we can be completely 100% right and be wrong at the same time. How many are guilty of that? Don't raise your hand. I am, right? Translation, what are you saying, Apostle Paul? Just say it in English. Grow up. This church in Corinth, by the way, they need to grow up a lot. If you've ever been part of a church that was childish and immature and full of believers that hated each other or did weird things, or you ever been part of a weird church, this is the church that beats that. And he wrote all this stuff. Paul wrote this big letter to the Corinth church, and he said in chapter 13, what's the main theme of chapter 13? Any Bible scholars? Love. Everybody knows that if you read the Bible. Okay? Love. And then he goes, you know what? If you love each other, you need to grow up. You need to be the adult. You need to be the adult. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a master class in how to grow up spiritually and how to grow up emotionally. You're going to want to get your PhD in this because this is that important. Because did you know this? The way that you treat other people is a sign of your immaturity or maturity. And not only that, but you can actually say, I love God, but you know what? I don't really like that person. And God says, you can't love him if you don't love other people. If you have something against someone else and you don't, I just can't stand that. I want you to think about someone right now. I'm going to kind of be unfair here. I want you to identify one person, just one. Even if you have 100 people, you got another problem. But if you have one person in your life, I want you to think about one person that there is a relational rift between you. And I'm not the one that's saying this. The Bible says it. You cannot love God if you have that emotion, that relational rift between you. I didn't say that. I hate that. I'll be honest. I hate it. But we'll read it in just a moment. But it is one of the signs of loving God and being truthful about it is you don't have to agree with everything that everyone does, but you have to, as much as you are responsible for it, as much as you can, try to mend the relationship. Go to someone that hurt you. Go to someone that you hurt and try to mend that relationship. Okay? No, well, they hurt me really bad. The Bible doesn't make it clear what level of hurt that they gave you that you have to do that for. I don't have to trust them. I don't have to hang out with them like I used to. But I can't have this rift between us. So we want to talk about how to resolve conflict in a biblical and mature way. Now, how many of us have ever had conflict in our life between you and someone else? That person, I've said this before here, but that person that you had relational conflict, they might be dead. Some of us have had to go to a tombstone and have a conversation that they can't hear. But it was for you. See, nothing reveals an emotional age more than how you handle conflict. I've handled it wrongly, and I've proved to myself and other people that, Joel, you're a baby. Or let's be fair, I wasn't a teenager. Because teenagers are just as bad sometimes as babies. Not always. Not always. I prefer the 15-year-old Hayden than the 2-year-old Hayden. Some people would have it reversed. Like, I love babies, but teenagers, that scares me. No. Teenagers, that's hard, but it's no 2-year-old. He can change his own diaper. He doesn't wear a diaper, but he's going to be upset at me, but that's okay. I'm used to it. No, I can't help it, but the truth is many Christians are terrible at resolving conflict. People get in arguments in church. Don't raise your hand if that's been you, but I'm sure you've seen it. People stab each other in the back. People get in disagreements and go, you know what, Wade? I really don't agree with this, and I don't agree with the way that you said this. I don't agree with how you did this. I'm done. I'm out of here. Or you go talk to Ron and you say, Ron, did you hear what Wade did? Wade is look at what he did. And then I leave the church forever, and I say, every time I see Wade, I'm going to avoid him at all costs, because every time I see him, that anger boils up inside of me. I don't think I've ever been mad at you, literally. That's cool. He's peaceful. He's just a man of peace, I guess. You're a little bit different than I am. I'm loud, extreme, and that's not how you are. Maybe that's why I like you, because you're everything that I wish I was. But I'm not that. I'm opposite. But can you imagine if I had something against him and I decided, I'm having a pity party and I want to leave, and every time I see you at the store and I have a gallon of ice cream or so, whatever, not a gallon, a quart, whatever that thing is, and I look at you and I see you down the fishing aisle or whatever, right, close to it, or the outdoors aisle, and I look at him, I'm like, didn't see him. I'm out of here. I don't want to. See, basically, if that's me, that's horrific. If I'm playing the avoidance game because I can't stand him. That happens in churches. And it should never, ever, ever, ever happen. I don't care if we disagree. We can learn to disagree and not be disagreeable. Now that's easier said than done. I'm a married man. If I look at myself, if I could just pause one argument between me and Lydia, and I could take myself and I could just turn myself and I go, you can disagree with her and not be disagreeable. Myself would go, yeah, right. You don't know what you're talking about, Joel. But the truth is, I've got to get to a place in my life where I can learn, you know what? I don't have to agree with everything that you say or do, and we can still be friends. Wow! Or I can go up to someone that actually hurt me. And I can, with God's help, trust me, it's not my own, but I can actually not hold it against them ever again. How do you do that? With God's help. You don't do it on your own. There's no way on earth you could do it on your own. But that is the only way that God actually does flow in a church. That's a problem that someone have is they actually avoid people. The other way is that often people just want to ignore conflict. They just stay quiet about it. It's why some husbands, they won't try to deal with the relationship. They just are quiet. They're just, I'm quiet. I shut down. I'm a peacekeeper. Even though it's not really peace, it's avoidance. It's like a bird that puts his head in the sand. And that's what they do. And that's peace to them. But Jesus says, no. You can't avoid those conflicts. You shouldn't avoid those conflicts. You need to go head on. I'm going to read the most shocking words that Jesus ever said. And if it wasn't right in the Bible that was Jesus, I would think it wasn't Jesus. I would think it was Peter. Okay? And it's found in Matthew chapter 10, verse 34 and 36 through 36. You're going to be, if you've never read this, you're going to be shocked that it's Jesus. When I was a kid, I thought of Jesus more as a Mr. Rogers kind of guy. You see these pictures of Jesus holding the lamb? My grandma had a picture of Jesus holding the lamb. I don't know if it was my grandma. Somebody had a picture of Jesus holding the lamb, and right behind him was like New York or something. Or it was the United Nations building or something. I can't remember. But it was like him holding the lamb. And I always thought, that's Jesus with this grin on his face. He looks so peaceful. He's like, oh, it's okay. Here, have a bottle. There. Here, have a binky. Put that in your mouth and just be calm. Here's a blankie. No, this is not Jesus giving you a bottle. Matthew chapter 10. Don't imagine that I came to this earth to bring peace to the earth. What the heck? What's going on here? What? Am I got the right verse? Or is it, okay? I came not to bring peace, but what? A sword. Now pause. Is that just me or is that kind of shocking that Jesus said that? I have come to set a man against his father, a daughter against her mother, and a daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. Your enemies will be right in your own household. Now, that does not get preached in church. Because someone can look at that. Now, by the way, this is huge. Bible study for a moment. Bible study moment. You can't read the Bible in bits and pieces. If that was the only verse I got from Jesus, I'd get a huge image of Jesus that's not correct and complete. But if I look at Jesus as the peacekeeper, that would be incomplete too. Okay, Joel, what are you saying? My main point is not this verse. My main point is this, that oftentimes, Jesus said this, that there are times where you have to go head on into the relationship that you have something against, and you need to deal with the problem. You need to deal with the issue, especially if it's in your own family. If you have something against someone, don't put your head in the sand. Don't avoid. You go make it right as much as you can. You can't control the other person. I've been a Christian for a long time, and I've been married for almost 18 years. You can't control the other person. And you shouldn't control the other person. You can control, and I sound like my mom now. You can control what you do. You can control with how you react to things. You can control in your marriage, in your relationships at work, or with your relationship with your neighbor, or with relationships in the church. You can control how you respond to them. But I am guilty in my life throughout the years of responding poorly. And I know other people are too. So, seek restoration. This is huge. Go above your, quote, right to be offended. Go above your right to be hurt. And you could be hurt. Don't pretend that you're not hurt. Emotionally, physically, whatever. They hurt you. They harmed you. There's no denying that. But you go above your right to constantly point at the fact that they hurt you. And you go seek restoration. See, here's the thing. You don't need to say it out loud. Don't point at people. Right? Don't point at people. Well, if you knew Lydia, oh boy, she's really good. Who do you currently have conflict with? Again, this could be someone from an old church. This could be someone that's no longer alive. This could be a parent. This could be an uncle. This could be a cousin. This could be a teacher. This could be someone from your way past. Or it could be someone right now that you're dealing with. Right this second, it's fresh. And I want to give you step-by-step ways to resolve conflict. And I've had conflict in my life. And I know you have too. And this is so important. We've been going through the series for weeks and weeks. We've been going through this series since 1982, okay? We've been going through a long time. I love this series, but the way I want to end this is I want to give you a step-by-step way of making it right. Okay? Because every time when I'm doing these steps, by the way, my natural tendency is to do the opposite. So, for example, number 1, 5 steps to resolve conflict biblically. Make the first move. Make the first move. Don't wait for them. That's called being an adult. Okay, I'm married, so that's the example that I use. But I could sit there and sulk and be so mad at her or at Hayden, and I go, well, I'm just going to wait until they make the first move, and then I'll see if it's right. They might not make the first move. So what are you going to do? You're going to have this rift between you for the rest of your life? Yes. No. You're going to see how important this is in just a moment because you don't wait. You, as the adult, you take the initiative. See, when Hayden was younger, even now, Hayden, you're a grown-up. I don't expect you to be grown-up. You're older than you used to be, but I don't expect you to be 40 years old. Because when we're in a disagreement, which if you're a parent, you know what I'm talking about, you have a disagreement, I have to be the mature one. That's not always the case. Lydia might have all of a sudden 2 children. Like, when did she have a second child? In those moments that I'm arguing with him and I'm acting like I'm his peer. But as the mature adult, I have to be the grown-up and I have to go seek to make it right. I can't wait for Hayden to make it right. It might not happen. I can't try to seek restoration with my boss or a coworker or my employee or a former boss or a former this or an ex-spouse or this or that. I can't wait for them because it might never happen. But Joel, it was all their fault. If they come to me, then I'm going to work it out. That's called being a baby. That's called being a teenager. That's what teenagers do. Matthew chapter 5. This is also shocking. It might surprise you to say this, that Jesus says some things that are very shocking. But I love this one. I don't like the other one. But this one I love. But it's very instructive. Because if you're in the middle of an argument with someone else, or you have a disagreement, you might as well have not come here, and you might have dealt with the relationship first, then show up here. We're like, you're kicking me out. No. Jesus said this in Matthew chapter 5, verse 23 and 24. So if you're presenting the sacrifice at the altar in the temple, I put my own word there, worship. If you're at church and you're going like this, like we do, like the surrender sign. You know, have you ever done that? You know, amazing. If you're doing that, and you suddenly, because you're like me when you worship, you have something that comes into your brain like that, right? Have you ever worshiped and all of a sudden you think, oh my word, I have to do this. All of a sudden you remember someone has something against you. Not that you have something against someone else. You suddenly realize that Dwayne has something against Pastor Joel. You don't, right? Okay, perfect. I'm just making sure. We can have a relational peace meeting right here if we need to. But if you all of a sudden you're worshiping God with your favorite song and you're being the loudest and you're being the most obnoxious worshiper, you're jumping up and down like back in the 90s we used to do. It was very weird. But I mean, it was fun, but I don't see that hardly anymore. I just don't. But when we were in church, we'd be up in the front and people would be jumping up and we have mosh pits in church. Very 90s of church. But all of a sudden you're going, I have relational conflict. Leave your sacrifice there at the altar. Okay, pause. What's he saying? If you all of a sudden remember, man, there's someone that has something against me. I have relational conflict. Leave. Go make it right. Go and be reconciled to that person. Then come and offer your sacrifice. Then do that. Here's a huge thing. As crazy as it sounds, it would be better if you're having an argument with your spouse to stay in the parking lot. Say, honey, but we have to be in church. What would they think if we're just sitting out there? Huh? Yeah, I guess we're having YouTube Sunday because in the pastors, you're going to have a sermon online. That's fine. We can record it for you. But it would be easier for us and more biblically accurate to stop worshiping and go make it right than go worship. Listen to me. This is huge. This is going to sound, you might have to think about this for a minute. It's more important that you have reconciliation in your relationships than worship of Almighty God. That's shocking. Are you serious? Yes. And I wouldn't believe that if it wasn't for this. And a couple other verses in the Bible. Okay? Be reconciled. Reconciliation is huge. Why is this important? Well, because relational conflict blocks my fellowship with God. I can't get around it. Why? Because the person that you're in relational conflict with is a child of God, and they need the mercy of God, they need the grace of God, they need forgiveness, they need love, just like you do. You've made it wrong in other people's life. You need restoration, and they need restoration just like you do. And when you look at the Bible, and I'm flipping through the Bible, and it says stuff like this. While we're still sinners, Christ died for me. I go, but this person hurt me. And Jesus goes, but what did I do for you? How can you expect me to forgive you, but you go to Billy Bob over here and he acted like an idiot to you and he hurt you? And it's nothing, you're not denying it. You're not putting your head in the sand. He harmed you. But how can you expect to be forgiven of your stupid mistakes and your sin and go, you know what? You're forever hurting and the relationship's forever being done. Now, by the way, this is a side note. Let's take a little pause, a little commercial break. This is hard. This is difficult. You can't do this on your own. You got to be full of God's presence. We need each other majorly. Now we're back on the regular scheduled sermon. 1 John 4:20. You're Pastor Joel, why can't you be biblical? Why are you just speaking these non-truths? No, it's true. Look at 1 John 4:20. This is plain. If someone says, I love God, everybody say, I love God. If someone says, I love God, but hates a fellow believer, that person is a liar. Oh, John, you're having a bad day. You're having a bad day. The Apostle John who wrote this, who's all about love, by the way, you're a liar. For if we don't love people that we can see, how in the world can we love God whom we cannot see? He's not lying there. How can I go up to God who I've never seen before and say, me and you, we're cool, but I can't stand Dwayne. But I can't stand Wade. But I can't stand Billy Bob. Okay? I can't stand them because I don't agree with them. They don't like the way that I dress, or they don't like the way that I preach, or they left my church, blah, 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 blah. I'm just not... Listen to me. This is just as relevant to me as it is for you guys. This is a small town. Isn't it? You can't avoid those people that you can't stand forever. You will see them. And when you go to Lewiston, you'll see them. And when you go to a movie, like a movie theater, or you go to the drive-in theater, you'll see them. They follow you. Because God has a great sense of humor. And He lines up everything perfectly always. Okay? It's just true. You can't come to church and say, God and me are cool, but there's someone over there I can't stand, and I can't, ugh, ugh. And it doesn't say what they did. You might have every quote right to hate them. You might have every right to be relational conflict with them. It doesn't say, well, up to this point, then you can hate them. You have to love them. But after that point, you got to hate them. That's okay. It doesn't say that. So then you make the first move. Then you have a peace conference. This is easier said than done. But you have a peace conference. And you start with what's my fault, right? Some of us, including myself, have a hard time saying, this was my fault. Or, I'm sorry. Yes. Sorry. See, man, I'm a talker, and you know that. But when I have to say I'm sorry, all of a sudden, for some reason, I can't talk anymore. Right? And it's natural. It's human. How many of us had to go up to someone and say, I'm sorry, and it was the hardest thing you had to ever say? It's humbling. One person, that's it? One person. No. I mean, okay. One person rose their hand. Everybody else is like, relational conflict? What are you talking about, Pastor? We've all had to say, I'm sorry. But you go to this person, you say, you start with what's my fault. But Pastor, it was their fault. That could be 100% true, but maybe you didn't respond the right way. You could be 100% right and 100% wrong. I'm guilty of that. But now you go, I'm going to go up to that person. I'm going to go, you know what? I have a long list of things right now I'm going to read. I have this against you. 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 How are you doing? Let's restore this relationship. But I got this long list. I'm telling you, it's this long list of things that I have against you, Dwayne. I'm prepared. I came prepared. Here's my list. How many of you, if I came to you, Dwayne, and I had this list of things I had against you, and I wanted to restore the relationship, if I started like that, would that make you want to listen to what I have to say or not? No, it wouldn't. If I came up to that person and I said, now, Holy Spirit, you've spoke to me, and I'm going to start this with being honest about my own shortcomings. You're going to be a lot more willing to listen if you realize that I realize that I'm a bonehead too. Right? Don't agree with that. I'm not a bonehead. No, that was just a trick. But start with what's my fault. James 4, 1 through 2. Another book that you need to read. James. That's the most practical book of them all. What is causing the quarrels and fights among you? Don't they come from evil desires at war within you? You want what you don't have, so you scheme and you kill to get it. Man, that seems more relevant today, this last week, than it ever has. Anyway, you are jealous of what others have, but you can't get it. So you fight, and you wage war, and you bicker, and you stomp your feet, and you go, I'm getting my way, to take it away from them. In other words, you need to figure out why is there tension between you and someone else? It's because usually either you don't want to admit you're wrong, Or you have a good tendency, just like human beings, to go, I can see what you did wrong in high definition. Man, Wade, when I see what you've done against me, it is so clear. But for me, I can't really see what I've done against you. It's not that clear. It's an old-fashioned TV from the 1950s, right? And it's black and white. But when I see you, I see it completely clearly. See, here's the thing. Mature adults, they resolve conflicts rather than dissolve relationships. Babies, and we're all guilty of it, immature Christians, we don't want to resolve the conflict. We just want to dissolve the relationship. It's so much easier just to cut it off. It is. It's so much more work to work on the relationship. There are times, and I always use my marriage, but there are times, I've been married 18 years, that's long enough to know that there are times when we've argued that it would have been easier just to cut the marriage off and be done. Now, I know that would cause some other headaches, but for a lot of things, it would be easier to just go, it took work to make it right. But I'm glad that we did. I'm glad that we did. Number 3, after you start the peace conference, you start with what's my fault. You confess to yourself, to God, to someone else, your blind spots. The things that are in your life that you don't want to admit that are wrong with you, or you just can't see them. We all have them. My new car tells me if there's someone in my blind spot. It's great. Beeps. Beep, beep, beep. When you're backing up and they're coming towards you, beep, beep, beep. I love that. But every car has a blind spot that you cannot see the car coming. If you don't pay attention to its blind spots, damage could happen to your nice car. And in your own life. We all are sinners in need of the grace of God. You need grace as much as the person who hurt you. You need grace as much as they do. Matthew chapter 6. Now I love this verse because it's funny. Jesus is being humorous here. He is. I mean, if you know Hebrew literature, he's being very extreme for a point. And every time that Jesus would be extreme for a point, he's being funny. Like he expected to laugh. Like, ha, ha, ha. Okay, Matthew chapter 6, verse 3 through 5. And why do you worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? Imagine that. Let me get that little speck out of your eye for just a second. And you got this big log stuck in your eye. I mean, wouldn't that be kind of ridiculous? Oh, you got something in your eye right there, and you got this 2x4 sticking out your eye. How can you think of saying to your friend, let me help you get rid of the speck in your eye, when you can't even see past the log in your own eye? Hypocrite. First, get rid of the log in your own eye. Then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye. Pause. This is you know how people say you should not judge. Don't judge me. Jesus did say don't judge, but he also said, you know what? There are things that in a friend's eye, I could be so apt to going up to my friend and going, oh, let me help you out a little bit here. And I forget about the things that are in my own life. It's better if I go, Joel, you're an idiot in this, this, and this. Let's take care of this. And then I go, now I can see very clear what's going on here, and I'm going to help my brother out. Instead of being so judgmental and just running to him instantly. If I run with the 2x4 in my eye, trying to get the speck out of his eye, what's going to happen? It's going to cause damage to him. Okay? Jesus is being humorous here. And I'm not going to because I'm not that funny, but we had 2x4s outside. Don't worry, I cleaned it. It looks dirty, and it is, but can you imagine if I walked around with this, and I said, Alice, you got something in your eye. I mean, seriously, that's so stupid. It's so ridiculous. Hey, Alice, you got something in your eye. First of all, I can see a red hat because I don't have my glasses on. Or a pink hat or whatever. I don't even know colors, but I'm learning. Like, I'm serious. Like, Alice, I love you, but there's something in your eye. And you're like, Joel, you got something in your own eye. No, I don't. No. Deal with the stuff there. In other words, you got your own stuff to deal with, too. Not just pointing fingers at the person who hurt you. Not just be angry. Jesus is being funny here. And number 4 is so important. I've been at the receiving end and the giving end of the opposite of what this is going to say. Okay? You're having this peace conference. You admit that you admit where you're wrong. You see your blind spots. You can't see. Your glasses are off. You have a log in your eye. I can see a pink hat, and that's about it. But let me help you out and judge you and be so mad at you. But number 4, wrap the truth in love. Now, be honest, have you ever been yelled at by something that it's completely fair that they did that, but they did it in a way that you couldn't receive it because of how they said it? You've done that with other Christians. You've done that with coworkers. You might have done it if you were married or you are married. You might speak the truth in truth and be completely wrong because of how you said it. Now, I'm guilty of this. I've been on the giving end of this and the receiving end of opposite. They hit me over the head with a Bible. Not literally. Maybe they need to. But they beat me over the head with the truth because they think they have, this is how God created me. I just like to just speak the truth, even if it hurts them. Really? I mean, Ephesians 4:15, speak the truth in love. Speak the truth in love. I can't go up to my friend Dwayne here and just start spewing at him truth without understanding him and start going, you know what? He is this way or he is that way. Here's my brother in Christ. I can't just run up to him and just start spewing at him truth about things that he's hurt me. You've never hurt me. But imagine if you did, and the first thing I did, I'm here to restore the relationship, but let me just spew all over you verbal truth and bash you over the head with the Bible. What's it going to do? It's going to cause damage, and the relationship's going to get worse and worse and worse. Believe me, I've been there, done that. How many of us are so willing to have a conversation with someone that they're trying to restore the relationship, and they start speaking like truth in a hateful way? Does that make you want to listen to them? It doesn't. But you better believe the times that someone had something against me and they said it in a way that I could receive it. It's still humbling. It's still humbling. It's never like, oh, I'm so glad for this meeting. I can't wait. No, you're like, oh, this is going to be the worst meeting. But if they do it in a way that was truthful about it. I had my pastor friend who led me to the Lord. He was my best man at my wedding. When I was in college, I would be speaking in a sermon, and then he would critique me. And he had a wonderful way of wrapping it in love that I was not doing that good. I'd be preaching, and I'd be done, and then after the Wednesday night service, I would go into his office, close the door, and I'm sitting there, and he would just he wrote down critiques because that was part of his job for my internship. And you better believe it was humbling and humiliating how bad it was. But I thank God of the way that he said it to me. It made me want to keep going. It made me not go, you know what, I'm not really good at this. I better not do this. I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to waste my money. I don't want to waste my future on something that wasn't good at. But he made it in a way, he wrapped it in love that said that he saw the potential in me. And I could see it, I could hear it in his voice, I could see it in the way that he said it, because I wasn't good. It was horrible. It was horrific. Speaking in public is not easy. And he spoke the truth in love. Now, I use that as a silly example, but what about the serious stuff? The way, if you want to restore relationships, you got to speak the truth in love. You got to have tact. That's an old-fashioned word for saying it correctly, doing it right. We all are guilty, or we know people who they speak it, but no tact. You could be right and wrong at the same time. 100% right, but 100% wrong. And last, but certainly not least, focus on reconciliation, not resolution. How many of us agree with everybody at all times, 24/7, all the time, the rest of your life? There are things I'll never agree with with my wife. We're different that way. She's wired differently. I'm wired differently. But I still live with her. That's called being an adult. Right? If you're always trying to reestablish I have to agree with everything with that, you're never gonna get there. You have to reestablish the relationship. And last but certainly not least, Romans 12:18 as we close this. One of my favorite verses. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. I'm going to read that one more time and we're just be done. Because now it's your turn. Now it's your turn to go out and make it right. If it's possible, as far as it depends on you, not them, you, live at peace with everyone. Ex-wives, ex-friends, ex-church members, ex-pastors, the person who hurt you in middle school, the person who beat you up and threw you in a brick wall. Yeah, that's true. As far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Let's take a moment and pray. Lord, help us. Help us to live for you with everything. I pray that there'd be any relationship in this room that would be a broken relationship. I pray there'd be restoration. I know it's hard. It is hard. But this is a process. This is a lifetime process of going out and making those relationships right. As much as it concerns us, as long as whatever we can control, because we can't control everything, we're going to do our part to make the relationship right. This is important, God, because we can be right with you 100% when we make it right with the people around us. Your Bible says it very clear, God, that we cannot say, I love you, God, and say, I hate my brother or my sister or this or that. I can't, it's not possible. And I know how serious that sounds, and it is. I pray that each one of us would be able to restore those relationships, even if those relationships are with people who are no longer with us on this earth, that we would make it right. And I believe peace will reign in our heart. And our emotions will be whole, will be healed, and we'll be emotional grown-ups and not be babies. We thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. God bless you guys.